Lights, camera, action. Mei Chan, welcome to the Impart Podcast.
Hi, nice to be here.
Is a cryptocurrency or Web3 wallet the new web browser?
It is a part of it. I think that when we talk about the future of interacting with things, especially in we were talking before this interview about AI and how it's going to have a huge change on everything. Basically, there's going to be a real need for you to sort of identify yourself or to, show who you are. And I think that Web3 and crypto is going to have a huge part in that. So yeah, as a wallet where you can actually store credentials and store assets and things like that, it's definitely going to be a fundamental part of the online experience going forward, where you have to prove who you are or, show credentials. And that isn't the case yet on the internet, but it definitely is going to change, especially as AI kind of takes over and floods everything with content that isn't human created or isn't human behind the scenes, right? So that's a topic in and of itself.
It is, and in fact, I'd like to go into it with you actually, because these kinds of things fascinate me. So, AI versus humans, we're literally going to have to verify that we're real. That's crazy. The blockchain comes into that for sure. AI comes into that for sure. Things like Neuralink come into that, and that's a bit wild. So like, so obviously you're the CEO and founder of HashPack, right?
Yep.
So you created a Web3 wallet that is kind of like the gateway into the Hedera ecosystem, and that's pretty awesome for us who are involved in Hedera. And yeah, I'd say to us right now, using that application is second nature. The world hasn't really realized that, Web3 wallets are even a thing yet. I'd say the majority of people are still asleep there. However, there's going to come a time where there's like a tipping point, and Web3 wallets are going to become a part of everyday life for, I'd say, everyone. I think everything will be tokenized eventually. Where does Web2 then sit in that whole space? Like, what happens to Web2 at that point? Because there's no way that like everything's going to be Web3. We're going to have some elements that are still Web2. So regarding the first question, like, what do you think is going to happen?
I think that, AI, although it's going to change a lot, it's going to also enable a lot of things too. So, people will be able to create a lot of content, just like how a good example is the gaming industry. Before Unity and Unreal Engine, people had to make their own game engines. And so it was only big companies that were really making the big AAA games. But now somebody can use the tools that are available to make their own indie game that is almost as good or even better than a AAA game. Same with AI. You're going to be able to just create things that you want to create. And that is just going to like unfetter human creativity going forward. And I think that Web2 is just going to have all this different kind of content that you can just consume. And for the most part, like you don't really care if your YouTube content creator did it with AI or not, as long as the content is good. And you don't really care where it came from. You don't really, well, you might care if it's true or not, but a lot of things are just for entertainment, So if you're watching like a Netflix series or something like that, it's fictional. So you don't really need that kind of Web3 layer of authenticity or justification, that kind of thing. So then I think that Web2 is just going to continue on that with content that doesn't really need to be verified, right? And is this there for entertainment or just there for consumption in ways that aren't critical to like real life processes that, like payment and like identity and those kind of things. However, wherever those kind of things become important, where the security of something becomes important, where the provenance or the identity of something becomes important, you're going to need some kind of way of proving that kind of information, right? So even if it's not HashPack specifically, it's going to be some kind of method of proving who you are and proving that you have the credentials to do something. And then for someone else who is consuming that content or relying on that content to then check and verify that that is there. And that's really the benefit of Web3 over Web2. So I think that Web2 is just going to keep on going, but there's going to be an underlayer of Web3 where it's necessary to prove these things.
Are you a gamer?
I am a gamer.
Likewise, I was impressed by that nugget of information you threw in there about the devices that were created.
Mm,
So
yeah,
you're a creative yourself. How do you view like augmented and virtual reality coming to play when it comes to things like Web3 applications? Because right now we'll run Hashback Wallet on a phone or on a desktop.
sure.
Um, how do you view that taking place in the future? Is it going to be like I think it and it happens, or is it going to be some kind of I press a few buttons or I move a few limbs? And have you thought about how you're going to prepare your product for that world?
I think that that's a really far thing in the future. I think that hashback will look very different in a world where people actually use Web3 to authenticate themselves or to pay for things. We're still not quite there yet. So I think that, right now, hashpack as a wallet is very DeFi focused. It's really around the decentralized finance world of crypto, which is its own little microcosm. And when we're thinking about broad adoption, when we're thinking about bringing in big companies and bringing in media and paying for media with royalties and those kind of things, DeFi isn't that vehicle, which is maybe a bit crazy to say because we're in crypto. It's a different world that is beyond DeFi. And so your user interface, your wallet will look different when that happens, right? Um, I guess that's like I'm saying these things and I'm thinking it's a very in-depth topic to be talking about so broadly. But basically, you're not going to like the way that I see, for example, if you're going to have a game with DeFi elements, with assets. People talk a lot about having, a NFT as a asset in the game. So if your avatar has a rare armor piece or whatever, that could be an NFT, could very well happen because uh, that kind of like being able to say that this is a one of one kind of thing, I could see that being very valuable. However, you wouldn't be using a wallet to navigate that. You would be using it inside the game and it would be seamless and you would be like, okay, well, this is a one of one thing, and people would be able to know that it's a one of one thing and be able to send it between each other without even needing to interface with anything. It'd be as like I see technology as making things easier. So if you have
Mm,
to connect to a wallet to give something to somebody, that's going to be very difficult. So a wallet really is going to have a different role and function in a world where everything is integrated into Web3. It'll kind of be in the background, which is really a Hedera thing from the beginning, is like you're going to be using Hedera and you're not going to even know it. And so, yeah, I think that it'll be very interesting to develop those kind of applications that handle things in the background so that you don't have to use a physical hashpack app. Um, but it will just happen and you know that your assets, your funds, your identity is being handled properly because the app or the ecosystem is set up in that way. And you use it as easily as you use your bank app for now, which is a centralized process, but you have confidence in it. But you don't actually know how those funds are transferred from one person to another. You push the button on your bank app and it happens. Well, this is going to happen with technology in the future. It's going to be so easy that people can just use it or AIs will use it for you. You say, I want to send this much HBAR to someone else, and you type it into your LLM, and then ChatGPT sends that money out, and someone else receives it, and you don't even have to know what the process is behind that. So, very interesting world. I don't think we can really predict what a wallet will look like, especially if AI starts coming into that.
mm. Yeah, I want to hone in on, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really glad that you said what you did because I think the ease of use is something that I just don't see in Web3 almost ever. And I just don't know why. And I'm like waiting for someone to tell me why. I use
Yeah,
Web2 applications and I love using them and they're easy. And then I come to Web3 and nothing is easy to use or intuitive. And it's one of the main reasons that I actually love Hashback and it's my favorite wallet ever. And it actually kind of drew me into Hedera and the ecosystem again a second time. And I was like, wow, this is like the best. This is the best wallet I've used. And I come from a place where, you had to sync the entire Bitcoin network before you could do a transaction, as I'm sure you did as
yeah,
well. So it's like I'm used to that old world. And that didn't make sense to me at the time, but things actually don't make sense to me even more now because we've seen the technological advancements that we have. And yet, like these Web3 apps are just so far in the past. Something I love that you guys have done is that, like, and it's a simple feature, but it's something that I'm so used to on something like a social media application, like WhatsApp. I can see my profile picture in your app, and I can send to people and see their profile picture. And that gives me like a sense of relief that I'm sending money to the right person, for example, or that I'm
Mm,
engaging in commerce with the right person. And it's
mm.
little features like that that go such a long way, and yet they're just not integrated. Why do you think that is, that like these Web3 products are just so really bad, to put it frankly, and so out of date when it comes to that?
Well, it's because it's not that they're bad, it's because there's a specific culture in Web3, and that is around people who are looking for the decentralized, trustless sort of technology that enables things that that are restricted or censorable or all those kind of things from centralized entities. So the way that I see Web3 culture is its priority is making sure that the tenets of decentralization and anonymity and trustlessness are followed. And so you say like they're back, like they're outdated or they're backwards. They're only outdated and backwards from a user experience perspective, but from a technological perspective, they are as like cutting edge as you can get, and they blow things like Visa out of the water in terms of like just how fast you can do it and how trustless it can be and how stable these kind of things can be, particularly when you get decentralization right, which you could argue that people haven't really done it that way yet, except for maybe Bitcoin, which has like thousands of nodes or something like that. But you know, and this isn't a dig on Solana, but Solana network goes down, right?
Hmm.
And that is just a nature of technology, but they're trying to do something that is very complicated. And so, um, even though it goes down, at least you have kind of trust that you put in a transaction into the network and it's going, if the network is up, it's going to happen, right? Whereas if you put a transaction into your bank account, do you know that that's going to happen? Or do you know that only you can put a transaction in your bank account? Actually, that's false, right? People have been surprised that their bank can just withdraw money from their bank account if they feel like it. They can just freeze your account whenever you want. So from a user experience point, crypto is maybe backwards, but that's because the focus has been on the technology and on making sure that you get this specific requirements that this culture needs, right? But now we're moving into 2025 and we're seeing that we're trying to hit that mainstream adoption. We're trying to hit more and more people because the technology is starting to become like enough that you don't just have to make little apps and little proof of concepts. You can actually make something that people can actually use, right? So the technology is maturing, and with that, the space matures, and the requirements on that now go into the user experience side of things, where now you have to make something that feels good to use, is easy to use, is intuitive, that you don't have to learn what is a private key in order to log into a website, right? And that is the thing that Web2 does really well, is the user experience, because that's the only way to get mainstream adoption, is to make sure that the user experience is good. So when you go to like Consensus last year and other big conferences in the Web3 space in 2024, the tone shifted so much from when it was from back in 2021. It's now about user experience. It's about seamless cross-chain activity. It's about all of these things that make it easier for the user to do what they want to do. And the reason why I think HashPack is so good is because from the beginning, we were all about making it easy for the user to do what they want to do, right? So I think that crypto is going to catch up and HashPack is going to continue to innovate on that front. And we're just going to see easier and easier ways to interact with the decentralized ledger like Hedera, Hashgraph, and other Web3 platforms. I don't think that there's going to be just one, but I think that we're going to see clear winners in terms of the technology when the user experience comes out, and then you have to worry about scalability and you have to worry about uptime and all those kind of things. So different L1s are going to show up or disappear as we get into the next bull run, I think. But yeah, I think that we're just going to start catching up on the user experience until it's seamless compared to Web 2. And then things get really interesting. Also, on that note, we're talking about AI. AI is going to change the user experience so much. It already is. Um, and that is going to really affect how both Web 2 and Web 3 interact with people and how people interact with them, right?
Hmm.
So crazy times. This 2025 is actually like, if you thought that like 2017 or 2021, the bull markets back then were crazy. I think that this next bull run is going to be even more crazy, not just in crypto, but like technology as a whole.
Absolutely. I love how you articulated that. And I think once again, we're all just waiting for that bull cycle now. I think people get a bit delusional, obviously it's just been like holiday season. It's not really the time that people are investing money. Usually we see dips in the market at that time of year. And yet we saw H bar go up, what, 700% or something like that? I mean, absolutely
Yeah,
insane, which is
yeah.
great for us because we're building on Hedera and we love to see that. And obviously we think that it's far, far more valuable than that, seriously undervalued. But yeah.
I
So
mean, Hedera jumped from top 35 coin to 15. But right, so like and we passed a lot of the like big L1s as well, and we had so much hype and activity in the token ecosystem, in the meme coin ecosystem. Now that we have the pump.fun alternate on Hedera, which is called Meme Job, that drew a lot of interest as well, and just like token projects coming in and like the blue chips that have been around for a while, everybody is actually seeing a lot of growth and a lot of excitement. That was back in November, December, and now, like you said, it's been in a lull. But I think that that's just normal for this kind of space. That you gotta look in the bigger picture of what's being built and what's happening, and when it lulls, you gotta understand that this is just how the system works, and that you got to be ready by looking at holistically what's happening and being prepared for that. So like personally, I think that we are in for a big a big ride this year, and I'm just waiting for that and doing what I can to prepare for that and support that. So yeah, very, very exciting times. Um, by the time, who knows whether by the time this video comes out, whether something will happen and everybody's just in hype mode again, because this space can turn on a dime.
it really can. I almost said something really impulsive just now when you were talking about AI and, decentralization versus like how we use Web2 apps and stuff. And I literally almost said like, do people really care about the decentralization element? I think that when Bitcoin came out, a few nerds like me cared about it.
Sure.
Um, dare I say, like us. And like, there was a time where we cared about that, but I genuinely think that like 90% of people who hold Bitcoin probably don't understand what it is and haven't
Yeah,
read the Bitcoin white
absolutely.
paper. So like would you say that people probably care more about that and the security elements of it, or would you say they probably care more about a good user experience right about now?
People care about user experience. Even developers, even companies care about the user experience. You cannot have adoption without good user experience. And like when you talk about companies, what is user experience? User experience is how easy it is for you to develop your platform. How easy is it for you to maintain it? How reliable is your platform? These are things that are very important to both companies and for people. Like, and so decentralization is not important to people until it becomes important. And that is where we are going to see big changes. If we talk about AI, decentralization in AI, something that Hedera is really looking into, is how do you and also trust, right? How do you make sure that the data that is being used as the foundation for that AI model is trustworthy? How do you make sure that you know what data is being used? Because that's also extremely important. It could be a trustworthy source, but the data that is being used is not the right kind of data or not a complete set of data, and you have to be able to see what that is. And when you start relying on AI for those kind of things, now you don't want to rely on a company whose motivations might be different than yours. If you're Apple, you don't want to use the Google AI model, probably, right? If you're somebody from one part of the world, you might not want to use an AI model from another part of the world. But how do you know that, right? And that is where you're going to see the identity aspects and the trust aspects and the decentralization aspects become very, very important in the future of tech. And not because people care about it, but because if you don't have that, then things will break. And then if things break, you have awful user experience. You have people taking advantage where you don't even know that you're being taken advantage of, like competitors coming in and poisoning the data set or things like that, right? So all of these base technologies of Web3 are going to be fundamental to the technology actually working and being trustworthy and scaling properly. And that is where the decentralization is important. So users, people, they won't care, but it will be so important to make sure that you get that. Otherwise, the product that you create for those users is not going to be sufficient. So
What shaped the user experience for HashPack? Because obviously, like, as a creative, I can really respect the beauty of the layout of the app, the ease of use of the app. Like, where does that creative spark come from in HashPack? And like, how did that user experience get shaped? Because it's a really intuitive user experience.
it's like the whole co-founding team. So Jacob on our team is our CPO and our designer, and he's the one that came up with the layouts and then does all of the UX UI design. And then there's Tyler, who is our CTO, who did all of the front end work and all of the also the back end work. The guy's a monster in development. But between the two of them, they created the user experience for HashPack. And I think that the main thing that made HashPack great, aside from just having people who are very competent at their roles, is that we use HashPack on a regular basis. We are ourselves part of the Hedera community. We also take part in the swapping and the trading and the NFTs and that kind of thing as people, as users, especially Tyler, who has a lot of connections in the community. So we have a very deep relationship with the community that is actually using our product. And so that's basically why HashPack has succeeded, is because we ourselves are part of the community that uses it and that needs a wallet that works very well, right? And I think that that's the truth about any sort of really good application or really good game or anything like that. Even media, like the people who are really into that culture and that niche, if they're the ones that are doing the creating, then that product is going to be exactly a fit for what that platform needs.
I don't want to go off on like too much of a tangent, but I really love what you're saying. And I think that, okay, so like in music, there is this thing called sampling, which you know what that is. For
Yep.
people who don't know what that
Yep.
is, it's essentially when you take a sound that has been pre-recorded and you sample that into your project file, and then you manipulate that sound and you use that sound to create new versions of that sound, and maybe a whole song from one sound, or maybe it's a part of a song that you're creating. And sampling was banned at a certain point in music. And bands like Massive Attack, who are some of my favorite of all time, their whole sound changed and their level of creativity changed as a result. And I think for the worse. Do you think with AI, we're going to enter a space where like that whole like sampling world is going to kind of be reignited in a new way, and everything is just going to become this massive kind of collage of ideas? Like, do you think that we're seeing a liberation of creativity as a result of AI, or do you think it's stunting growth and it's a bad thing because people's ideas are being stolen?
That, I mean, like stolen is an interesting thing when you talk about creatives. Um, it's like I mean, the whole concept of art is building on what inspires you, right? And so if you don't take inspiration, then you're going to come up with worse kind of things. Like you don't evolve the space. You don't, I don't know, like that is its own topic. But like AI will do a lot of things with regards to creativity. It already is. Like if you like the biggest one here is image generation. So you're gonna just be able to make an image for something and it will just be AI created. And it's not perfect yet. You can definitely see if something's AI created, but at the same time, it will eventually become to the point where you can't tell the difference. And then you just like, I want to make a background image of a sunset in this city, and then it just creates that for you, or an animation for that, or something like that, right? And the interesting thing about AI, at least right now, is that although it takes samples and it merges things together in unique ways, so that's where you get your inspiration aspect of it. Um, and that in itself is a big part of creativity. I think that the other thing is that that I see with AI is that it also kind of muddles everything together and you get sort of like a generic feeling to it, to the things that it creates, right? So I think that one of the great things about human creativity is you can not just take inspiration from something, but you can build on it. And I think that people who are going to start using AI samplers and AI mashup kits and things like that in the sound space or whatever, they're going to have to use their creativity in order to take those generic sounding samples from an AI that has mashed a whole bunch of things together and then use it in an innovative and interesting way. And maybe at some point AI will get good at doing that, which will be a huge jump as well. But I think that human creativity, like that's our strength. So like I don't know, we'll see how the space changes and how human value changes as AI can just do what humans can do and be as creative as humans can be. That is definitely a topic for the ages. But I think that it's just, these tools like AI, just like Unity engine and Unreal Engine that made making games even better. It didn't or easier, sorry. It didn't kill the gaming space, which some people thought that Unity and Unreal Engine would do. It actually made it so much more vibrant and expansive because now just a random person at their computer can put out a full-fledged game. Well, now a person at their computer, I mean, you're talking about sampling. Before sampling, you had to go into a room with a recorder with your band and do takes and full takes and maybe you could cut it here and there, but you wouldn't have access to a digital array of samples to build your sound. Now you can do that in your basement and make a completely unique sound to yourself. And then you have the DJs who do that, but also take other sounds and remix them and do that kind of stuff. Now you just multiply that by like a million with AI. People are just going to get more and more creative and more innovative. And I think that that's just going to push everything forward. And you're going to see a lot of fun things, a lot of unique things that just come out of these tools being available. So you said, is it going to kill this kind of space or something? It's definitely not going to do that. There's just no way. Just technology from just seeing technology over the past like 30, 50 years and what it's done to creatives and enable creatives, you cannot say that AI is going to do anything but positive things holistically.
I totally agree with you. And we're really trying to encourage people at Impart to like view it that way. And yet, people who are close to me who are very talented at what they do, someone said to me yesterday, I won't say their name, but they said, I just can't get behind AI art. Like, where does the database come from? And I'm thinking to myself, how can you still be saying that today? I mean, this is not like a year ago when kind of things started to heat up in that space. Um,
Yeah.
do you see AI ever creating a cryptocurrency? Is there any like utility for that in your mind? Or like how do you
There's
view
probably
AI integrating with HashPack?
there's already there's already AI projects that have memes around them and have social media following specifically for that. There you can actually rent out AI agents that then you buy tokens that represent that agent, and that agent goes
Hmm.
and does things. And a lot of them have anime avatars and that kind of thing. Like I have a friend who's really into AI, so it's already happening. And AI and Hashback kind of already happening. It's definitely something that we are looking into as well because this whole space is going to have to adapt to that. And Hedera also already recognizes that AI is such a huge thing and, integrated with Prove AI, formerly Casper Labs, and are building that kind of thing. My good friend Ash he's now at the foundation, is specifically moving in that direction, in the AI direction. So I think that we're just going to see so much innovation in that space. And if you're in a cutting edge space like crypto, you have to adapt to AI. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to happen. Um, yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for that perspective. You mentioned just now like everything becoming kind of cross-chain and like one harmonious ecosystem. How do you think that's actually going to come to play? Because then later you spoke about how like Google doesn't want to use Grok and
Hmm.
like, you know,
Hmm.
Elon Musk doesn't want to use ChatGPT, etc.,
Sure.
and like the West and the East, do you think that we're going to have like pockets of decentralization, or do you think that we're going to reach a point of like unity between all networks?
I mean, Google doesn't want to use Apple's stuff, but they still use the internet. They both use the internet. And Web3 is that kind of layer of utility that just kind of surpasses those kind of boundaries of corporations or governments or teams, right? So when we talk about cross-chain and L1s connecting with each other, you're going to be using those L1s for what they're good at, right? And there's going to be very specific reasons to move from one L1 to another, and having that bridge be as easy and seamless as possible is for the better of everyone. Just like you would use, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a Google Apple analogy, but there are things that Apple does very well. Maybe you can talk about like video editing or creative work, like creating digital art stuff. You would use a Mac for that, but you would use Google for something else. You would use Linux to run your servers and things like that. Like you're not locked into a specific technology, but they can still talk to each other and work together from a technological layer that you use the best tool for the job. And I think that L1s are going to be the same way. Right now, if you are I don't know, a Cardano maxi or Avalanche maxi or Hedera maxi, and you want to do something in Web3, you are only locked into doing it on that specific chain. And that solution may not be the best, but it's what you've got. As you build out more bridges and more cross-chain interconnectivity and make that more and more seamless, now you're not limited by whatever chain that you're invested in. Now you can build an app that uses the parts of Hedera that you want, but then also bridges into Solana, for example, and takes advantage of their meme economy or their NFT economy or something like that, and then brings it back onto Hedera for whatever you want to do on it. Um, yeah, it's just going to make things easier, and then you'll see that the ones that are very specialized, the L ones that are very specialized and tackle a particular niche very well, are going to do very well at that, and people will start using it for that reason. And then you're just going to see the ones that can't compete drop out, and the ones that are very good at multiple things gain stock and adoption. And yeah, that's just going to be the natural flow of things as we build out interconnectivity and make it easier and easier to use.
What fascinated you about Hedera? And are you talking about, you know, certain, let's call them ecosystems falling away? Some of us
Yep,
believe that all ecosystems should just fall away and there should just be one ecosystem, you know the name.
sure.
But like, do you think there's value in that, or do you think there's value in like multiple ecosystems? I don't know, like if a technology like Hedera does everything better, like why aren't we just using it? Do you think that there is a chance that like one ecosystem will kind of rule them all, like kind of Hedera and Bitcoin for the win? Or do you think that other projects that do things kind of a little bit slower, a little bit differently, will still have their place moving forward?
I mean, Bitcoin does everything slower uh, and differently. It doesn't do smart contracts. It doesn't do NFTs. But Bitcoin is king because it
Hmm.
is the best for holding value, right? Uh, and you're not going to see Bitcoin go away. At least I don't think it's going to go away. But can you say that it's the best for doing anything other than holding Bitcoin? You can't, right? And so Hedera, the reason why we like Hedera is because it's performant, it's scalable, it's trustless, it does all the things that it says on the tin. And it does it in a way that for a technological person looking in at all the flaws in other chains, it's very attractive with the way that they have built up that ecosystem. Sorry, the not the ecosystem, but the platform of the hash graph and how we think, or some people would say we know that it is better than the other alternatives out there. But can you say that Hedera is going to be by far the best at everything for everyone at all times? I don't think you can. I think that that's a bit of a naive way of looking at it. But I do think that as the space scales, as it gains adoption, you will see that the projects that can keep up with Hedera's scalability and speed and cheapness of use and all of that kind of thing, they're the ones that are going to compete and stay active and stay competitive. with Hedera, and Hedera is like its whole tenet was it's going to last because it's got substance, right? It's got real proper infrastructure to keep things going on an enterprise level. That's why we're excited about it. So it's not going to, I don't think it's realistic to say it's going to be the only one. I don't think it's nice to think about it that way either, because if you think that you're going to be the best no matter what, or you are the best no matter what, you're just going to get knocked down by someone who comes out of nowhere. And even today, Hedera isn't the best at a lot of things. Just look at it's number 15 on coin market cap. So there's 14 coins that are better at it in multiple metrics, right? So we're going to see, I think, Hedera start to come into its own identity and start to show adoption and show growth. I think that that is what I'm excited about, and that's why I'm building on it. But I think it's just like very important to just be like, let's do what we want to do. Let's build the things that we want to build, and don't care if there's other people trying to do the same thing. Let's do it our way as best as we can, and we'll see who keeps up. And there's going to be someone who keeps up, and there's going to be some who fall behind, and that's just the nature of technology and business and life, I guess. So yeah, I think that that's basically where we're at. Is like Hedera is great, but it's not going to be the only one. It's not going to be the greatest at everything, but it can be great at many things.
That's a really refreshing perspective. I think that a lot of people live in a fantasy world when they talk about these things, and I think I'm a culprit of that sometimes myself, especially on the X live spaces when people get excited about it. But there's
Sure.
a certain excitement to kind of the governing council and what it's doing now, and I just love
Absolutely.
everything that I'm seeing there.
Yep.
So there's a certain irony though. In fact, before I get into that, like what initially drew you to Hedera then? Because obviously it was special to you. So like what was
Oh
that like
yeah.
wow factor for you in the beginning?
It was specifically one video, which is Lehman Baird's uh, Harvard talk,
Wow.
and that talk was really good. I recommend everybody who's interested in Hedera to watch it, because he goes over what the technology of Hedera is, of the hash graph, what that is, why it works, why it's secure, why it's scalable, why it's better than some of the options out there in terms of L1 infrastructure. Um, and that is what drew me in and drew a lot of people in, is like the technology is just very well thought out, and it answers a lot of questions that um, other technologies don't answer well or don't answer at all. And so it's just like sweep things under the rug and just hope people don't notice it. Or eventually it comes to a point where it starts to fail on them. And then they're like, well, fundamentally, we can't fix this because the entire technology platform is built on these assumptions or this kind of thing. Hedera kind of addresses a lot of those things. So that is why I'm very interested in Hedera and why I like it. And certainly the fact that it's written in JavaScript
Mm.
is a lot is a big point too. So like, you don't have to learn a completely new language. If you have a little bit of web dev experience, you can build on Hedera. I guess that was the other thing that drew me in and made it easy to just start something. And that's still true today, or even more true today. Um, so yeah, I guess those two things. One is, well, and you can consider like the fact that it's written in JavaScript. User experience, which I was talking about earlier in the call, is that the user experience of Hedera back then, at least from the dev side, was really, really good. As someone who didn't want to learn Solidity, or other ways, like now you have SUI with the Move language and things like that. So there's a lot of benefits to Hedera on multiple facets, and I think that just makes it a very compelling place to build and to spend time in.
A lot of people share that perspective. It's kind of ironic though. So obviously to download HashPack and use the Hedera ecosystem, if you can put it that way, I've got to for to go on my phone, which is
Yep,
you might call it like a Web2 phone. Then I've got to go into a Web2 app
sure.
store, and then I download a Web3 app from the Web2 app store, and then there are
Yep.
dApps inside the Web3 app inside the Web2 app store. Like where is the next step there? Are devices going to become Web3 in your opinion? Like because then in that case, where is Web2 there? Like I don't want to get too contradictory here, but like that is a legitimate something to consider, isn't it?
There's a Solana phone already, so I mean, you could argue that it's already happened. Um, I think that is just going to happen. I think that we are expecting Apple to come out with some kind of crypto solution as well that just has it embedded in it. And as the like one of the giants in the tech industry, they are going to have so much sway on things when they implement their crypto backend on that. And knowing Apple, they're going to also make it proprietary, which is kind of like very strange from
Hmm.
a Web3 like culture kind of way. But we'll see. We'll see how it happens. And I think that as we solve for UX in the Web3 space, it's going to be easier and easier for developers and product makers to integrate Web3 functionality into their devices. And then where it's necessary, right? Like so you don't want to plug and play or you don't want to plug in Web3 stuff where it doesn't make sense and it just adds complexity and costs. But where it makes sense, I think that people will start to put that into their platforms, and then it will just be seamless, right? That's where I see it going. Is that like for example, you want to pay for something online and you've never been to that store before, you can use Stripe, you can use PayPal on those websites, and it's seamless, right?
Mm.
Same thing for Web3. You're just going to be able to use it, and it's just going to happen, and it's going to for the authorities and for the businesses that rely on it and for the corporations that rely on it, uh, that's going to just be like secure and trustless and um, uh, comply with like GDPR privacy laws and things like that, which corporations worry about, but individuals don't, sort of ish, right? Um, that's all going to be handled. And so when that becomes seamless, Web3 is just going to be in your life and you might not even know it, right?
Hmm.
So.
Yeah, I think that seamlessness is what we're all looking for, that user experience, as we put it earlier. But I think seamlessness is the word for sure. That's what everyone's looking for in this world of instant gratification that we live in. What do you think the big shift would have to be for Hedera and HBAR, let's say HBAR to become the number two cryptocurrency in the world? What do you think on, let's say, on coin market cap, purely by market cap? What do you think is like the big event? Like, let's say Elon Musk makes X coin and he uses the Hedera network. Do you think that's enough to
Yeah.
do it?
Um, that is a that is a loaded question because a lot of the activity in the financial world is based on big movers making big moves, right? So you can't just say that the tech will succeed because the tech is better. You can't say that a project will succeed because it has a good reason to succeed. Um, you know, uh, Things will happen because of a viral video, and that will kick off an entire bull market, you know, and maybe people don't even know what that event is, or maybe it's a big mover making a move. Who knows? Um, I don't know what the catalyst would be for Hedera success, but I think that you're not looking specific. You're like it might happen. You might just wake up one day and Hedera just like boom, and everything's like, oh, everybody knows the word Hedera. Maybe it'll happen, but I don't think you can bank on it. But I think that the people that are the quality builders that are building in the network, the people who are leading the charge right now, Charles Adkins is a great example of the president, or I think CEO of the HBAR Foundation now, a former president of Hedera, just like moving things forward. I think that these things we're going to be building little steps here and there, making the user experience better, making liquidity, like building up the liquidity on chain, and it will just mean that like you're just adding tinder to your little pile here until it becomes a huge mound, and then one little spark sets everything up, right? So I think that is probably what's going to happen is that we're just going to keep on building and then something's going to be the catalyst and then everything takes off from there. Um, that is what I think is the realistic option rather than one big Hail Mary event. Um, but we will see. I don't know what that could look like or what that looks like or who will be that killer use case that brings in tons of activity and interest into Hedera. Certainly if Elon or um, some other big influencer, Taylor Swift or something, launches something on Hedera, that would definitely move things, but I don't think that it's really realistic to bank on that or to think that that might happen as like the catalyst kickoff event unless there's something else going behind the scenes. So yeah, it's a very interesting space to be in, and it's a very unpredictable space, and we're just here to try to sit tight and go along for the ride and try to make things better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are, and I've certainly seen that you smiled multiple times when you talk about the community in the Hedera space in particular. What I'm seeing when I'm on live spaces on X, for example, is people are entering the space, new developers, small developers mainly, and just crypto enthusiasts, and they enter the space and they marvel at the attitude of people and like the depth of their like I want to say emotional intelligence of the people in the space, and also just like the meaning behind the projects they're creating, and people are getting excited. And so it's like that kind
Mm.
of kindling that you're talking about. I'm seeing it happening right now, and there's definitely like a tipping point for that, so I'm looking forward to that very much. And yeah, I think that's a very wise perspective, because ultimately, like, why isn't Solana number two after the president made a his own meme token? I mean, how ridiculous. Also, how hilarious that I'm pretty sure the American government like is properly aware of the existence of Hedera, and they obviously use Solana because there are more users on Solana, and they wanted to reach as many people
Yeah.
as possible. And it had nothing to do with the validity of their technology, which is so ironic. And like, look what's happened as a result. Oh my goodness. It actually was quite catastrophic. But that's a story for another day. Tell us about HashPack and the like things you're most excited about for 2025 with the app.
Mm.
Yeah, got anything exciting planned?
We do. We've been teasing a bunch of features that have just been in development for a while. People who are up to date on Twitter and in our Discord will know about Project X. Will know about our voting platform that is coming out, our governance platform, as it were. And these are very community-focused projects, but they're also like fairly complicated. So it's taking a while to put them out, but we are working on them. We generally don't kind of make long-term announcements of what we're trying to build or what we're planning to build, because we are a very agile team, and we kind of adapt to what the community needs when it needs it, and that sort of like takes precedence over big overarching plans. But we are building really heavily. I think in terms of like what we're excited about this year, I will just say HederaCon, which is on February the 25th in Denver. That is just coming up right away. And it's going to be the first sort of retail ecosystem, community focused sort of convention for Hedera. And that's going to be a really big thing. And it's taking place at the same time as ETH Denver. So hopefully we're going to see a lot of eyes from the crypto community in Denver at that time come and check out HederaCon. And HashPack is going to have a booth there. So if you're in the area, come and check us out. Come say hi. I'm going to be there. Tyler, our CTO, is going to be there. And also a whole bunch of people in the community who are builders are going to be there. So anyone who can come make it down to Denver on the 25th, that will be really, really fun. So look at the Hedera Twitter and website for more details, because they're the ones running it. But that's probably the thing that I'm most excited right now and looking forward to.
May, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. It really was a delight, and you're a wealth of knowledge. Is there anything you'd like to leave the Impart community with?
Um, no, I think that this has been a really fun chat. We went really technical and really kind of broader than Web3 in the discussions, and I think that that was really unique and fun. So thank you for having me here.
Such a pleasure. Looking forward to the next one.